Hello! Today I wanted to talk about something that's kind of a serious subject. I've seen multiple people over the years in real life and online tackling this subject, and there's many different ways to approach it. And I was a victim of this for many years when I was younger, so I figured that it was time to, bite the bullet, so to speak, and reach into my real life, get really real with you guys, and talk about what happened to me and the reasons why I think it happened to me. Because I guess before we go too far in, I have an opinion that not everyone agrees with when it comes to bullying, and that is that, at least with myself and my own experiences, I believe that yes, the young people who directly bullied me were in the wrong. They were very terrible, and there was no reason at all for them to be doing things like that to me. But I also blame the adults in the school this took place in. I blame them just as much as the bullies, if not even more, because they are the adults and they were supposed to be there to protect us, and they didn't. And I think that's a huge problem, not even just here, but worldwide. The fact that we're told when we're younger, if someone in school is hurting you, if someone in school is upsetting you or bullying you in any way, you need to tell an instructor or you need to tell the principal, and they will take care of it for you. That's what you're told from when you first start school until you graduate. But it's a lie, essentially. I mean, a lucky few might have one or two instructors who actually try to do something to help, but for the most part, it falls on deaf ears. You don't really get any assistance. I remember specifically being told in my youth that if anyone bullied me verbally or physically, I was to wait until I had a moment, alone, away from other students, whether that be at lunch hour, before school, or after school, to seek out either a teacher that I trusted or to seek out someone in the office and inform them of what happened, and that they would then call the bully's parents and explain what was going on so that our parents could meet and sort things out so it wouldn't keep happening. That's what I was told would happen. Instead, what actually happened was I had to switch schools in 7th grade. And I went from going to school in a private school in this big, fairly big city that was near Detroit, to going to a much smaller school that was kind of out in rural middle of nowhere, where pretty much all the students had already known each other for years, pretty much since preschool, and bonded, so I was definitely the weird one. On top of that, I've always been darkly inclined. I can remember even being darkly inclined when I was 8 years old, wanting anything that had skulls on it, wanting to watch nothing but Tim Burton movies and listen to what I deemed creepy music at the time. So I was excited because in private schools you have to wear uniforms, and here in America, if you're in a public school system, you don't have any uniforms. Like, there's basic rules, like making sure that you're not showing ass cheek or anything or too much cleavage, but for the most part, it's pretty much a free-for-all. So I'm all excited and oh great, I finally get to dress the way I want to. I can have what I wear reflect who I am on the inside. Now, in school, it really wasn't that bad with me. I wasn't nearly as crazy looking as I am now. I had purple lipstick, I had dark eyeliner, and I would wear hoodies that had little skulls on them, but for the most part they were pretty cute. They were like little pirate skulls or something, and black denims and boots. It wasn't nearly as crazy as me now or a lot of other kids that I met. But being the new person there and being darkly inclined must have been enough. The first day of school, one of my teachers instructed a girl in my class to try to kind of show me the ropes. She asked her to show me around the school, to introduce me to other students and just make sure that I integrated well. And for most of the day, everything was going just fine. People in classes either said hello to me or, just kind of kept to themselves, but I didn't have any problems. And then lunch period rolls around. I walk in, and as I'm in the doorway, the way our cafeteria was set up was you would go through either the doors on the middle school side or the doors on the high school side, and then we all used the same lunchroom, and there were a bunch of long tables set up in it. So I'm standing in this big doorway, and sitting at the table nearest to me is what appears to be a bunch of jocks. And one of the boys at the table looks up at me and says, I have to change his name even though he doesn't really deserve it. He says, Alan Black wants to know if you own a hairbrush. He said that because at the time I had really crazy, like Susie Sue type hair, which was deliberate. I intentionally made it really, really fluffy every single morning because it's what made me happy and it wasn't hurting anyone, so who cares? This kid says that. It takes me about 5 minutes to learn that this kid who asked that question through this other kid, Alan, was apparently the most popular kid in the school, and pretty much everyone just religiously followed him like a bunch of sheep because they didn't want him to bully them. So they either looked up to him in some disgusting way, or they were so afraid of him that they were like, we're just going to do what this kid says so that we don't get it. This is where the first problem comes in, and I'm sure a lot of people watching this will have suffered through something like this too. At first hearing, someone just saying something as simple as, I want to know if you own a hairbrush, doesn't sound that bad. It sounds like some minorly annoying thing your brother would say to you or something, and I kind of just shrugged it off like, whatever, that kid's an idiot, and sat down to eat my lunch. But the problem was, it didn't matter if the words themselves weren't that bad. What mattered was the person who said them. Because this kid's popularity was so out of control in this school, him saying that was a doorway. It was a gateway into further bullying. Once everyone saw him do it, they decided they could do it, and since he just decided to designate me his main punching bag, everyone just kind of followed suit, and it got progressively worse as the years went on. Second issue with this first bit of bullying, besides it just being a gateway, since it happened in the lunchroom, there were at least 4 adult lunch ladies in the room watching it happen, and 3 cafeteria workers who were in earshot, and not a single one of them said anything. No one even said, come on, dude, nothing. Radio silence from them, and that just kind of made everything worse because now the kids knew they could get away with shit like that. So, fast forward, basically, in a nutshell, throughout 7th and 8th grade, more and more kids that followed this popular kid would see how far they could go with me, and I wasn't a complete mouse. Like, I had probably like 4 hoodies that I wore interchangeably because I was in a really cold climate at the time, and I would wash whichever one I wasn't wearing at the time and, keep switching on and off like that. Most of them were black, as you can imagine, and I went to school one day, and here's an example of how I would handle the bullying. Some kids just how come you wear the same shirt all the time? And I was like, I don't, dumbass. That's how I would react to it. So technically I reacted correctly. Never listen to anyone who says to ignore it. It won't make it go away. It will make it much worse because they'll think that you're a little mouse who can't defend yourself. But the reason me defending myself and getting in these kids' faces wasn't working was, again, everything always either happened in class in front of the teachers or it happened in the cafeteria. Nobody ever did a thing to defend me. No adults helped me. They just kind of rolled their eyes. And finally, it was getting really bad. By high school, these kids were basically stalking me everywhere and harassing me, getting really threatening, getting really scary, to the point where eventually I ended up with really serious depression. I had some depression because of what was happening, but a majority of my depression was caused by a physiological problem I was suffering from at the time. Don't want to go too far into that, but basically I had a disease that was making these things happen, and I've since been rid of the organs that were causing the disease. But basically this disease was making it so I was so incredibly depressed that I was on regular suicide watch. I was missing days of class, lots of days of class, sometimes weeks of class. I had to go to the counselor's office pretty much every day that I was able to attend school. It was just really bad, and I constantly had to have an adult supervising me because, trigger warning really quick, skip ahead like 12 seconds if you don't want to hear anything triggering, but basically I'd had a couple of times where I just went on autopilot. That's all I can explain it as, like autopilot, like I wasn't even awake, where I tried to smash my head through the school window. And when I came to, it was like I didn't know what had happened. And because of that, I had to be on regular watch. Well, of course, didn't take long for the many bully kids, pretty much whole school, caught wind of this disease. Again, every teacher knew about it because they all had to be keeping an eye on me and making sure I was okay. And one night I had tried to ingest a toxin to basically put me to forever sleep. And I'm coming to school, and we had kind of like a ring driveway for the buses that I had to walk by in order to get into the school. As I'm walking by the bus, this kid hangs out the window and starts screaming, every part of me they found physically ugly or disgusting, and shouting that he wanted me to drink poison for him because no one would want me around anyway. And this became like a daily thing for a while. This kid and then many other kids joining in, saying what parts of me they thought were ugly and horrible, and that I was so disgusting that I needed to drink poison, all the way to the point where they would tell me which poisons to use, because if I was dead, the world would be better for it. Needless to say, that didn't help the depression at all. And I tried to go to a few teachers, and I tried to go to the counselor, and I tried to go to the principal. When I told them in detail everything that was happening to me, all of them responded by telling me that I needed to stick up for myself and grow a backbone. That's exactly what these adults said to me. These adults who promised me they would be there to help me if someone did anything harmful to me, completely betrayed me and told me that basically it was my fault. And then when I was like, I have been sticking up for myself, I've told them to stop, I'm not just being a little mouse about it, they said things to the effect of like, well, maybe if you, dressed a little bit more like them, they would stop, basically is what I was told. And I was getting pretty done by then. So basically, all through high school, I get absolutely no help and am basically told that everything is my fault. So then I get to college, and college is a whole different beast, and I'm like, finally, I can be completely independent. I'm at an equal level with all the instructors here because I'm an adult and they're adults, so this is going to be a lot easier. And it's a fresh start, nobody here knows me, so I won't have that same bullying issue. And I didn't, nobody bullied me per se in college, but that same victim-blaming mentality that allowed me to be bullied all those years to the point of multiple suicide attempts, yeah, that mentality carried over to college. I loved staying in the musical wing. I had like 4-hour classes all through college. I would take a couple 4-hour classes in the morning, and then I had this like 5-hour period where I would have to wait for my next class. So I would decide I want to do my work. I couldn't do it in the study hall because everyone was just too damn loud in there. So I would go to the music wing because I found it really relaxing. I liked hearing all the old CD tracks. I liked hearing everyone playing their instruments. It was just nice. So I would sit in the hallway, out of the way and out of sight of everyone so I wouldn't distract anybody. And I would just work on my homework. And this guy started showing up. He used to just come by all the time and leave through the exit door, so I was like, I figure he's just a student. And this was a really big guy. This was like at least 6-foot white dude that was at least like 250 to 300 pounds. He was a big, beefy guy. And he started slowing down as he would pass by me. And I took summer classes as well as classes during the year. I just kind of never stopped. And during my summer classes, Michigan summer can be nasty. It was one of those summers where it felt like every day was 100 degrees Fahrenheit and you were just baking like a potato. And so I would wear tank tops and little fishnet sleeves, so I still looked like me, but I was appropriately dressed for the weather. And I'm sitting in my usual spot doing my usual work, and he stops by and starts making really inappropriate remarks. You couldn't see anything on me, honestly. Like, everything was in his creepy imagination. But then he started pushing a little bit like, do you have a boyfriend? And I was like, actually, no, I'm kind of more into the ladies. And he was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And I was like, how so? And he's like, well, how can it be possible that you can't like guys at least a little bit? Because basically he started going on about how anyone that was biologically female was supposed to just be a baby oven, and that because of that everyone has to like guys at least a tiny bit, otherwise the world makes no sense. And I basically told him to fuck off, and in return he started telling me he was gonna see me basically every day. He was going to find me. Next school day, I'm in my spot, he comes back, and I'm just like, dude, go. And he tells me his van is outside and that I am going into the van. And I was like, I'm really not. So he comes up and looms over me so that I'm completely backed against the wall with nowhere to go. And by college, I was physically handicapped. So I was somewhat helpless, though not entirely, because I always carried a knife. And I'm like, you need to go or I'm calling security. And he was like, and you need to get into my van or X, Y, and Z really horrifying things are gonna happen. And this continued for quite a while. I would move spots, he would find me. I would even go to different buildings across campus. Somehow he always figured out where I was, and this was like long before you had like Facebook and stuff as means to communicate, you know, in the way that it is now. Like, Facebook existed, but it was in its beginning years where you certainly didn't mark your location and stuff on it, so I couldn't figure out how he was finding me. He has to have been stalking me, and every time I would try to rest anywhere and do my work, he would find me and tell me that he was going to correctively rape me to basically knock the gay out of me. And finally I was like, I can't handle this anymore, so I got a hold of one of my old instructors I'd had from music history, and I was like, listen, no matter where I go on campus, this guy is finding me and he's threatening to rape me. I need help. And he was like, okay, I'll take care of it. A little later on, he brings a campus police officer to me, and then the instructor leaves me with the campus police officer, and he's like, he told me what happened. And I'm like, okay, good, I don't have to explain quite as much then. This cop starts basically telling me that what he heard from the instructor is that I was leading this guy on and that I was the one who needed to leave. He was like, well, you shouldn't be sitting around for 5 hours anyway. Are you even a student? Where's your proof that you're a student here? And harassing me. So I was being harassed by a guy who was trying to rape me and then harassed by my old instructor and the cops. This kind of thing is why bullying is a problem. No, the kids or young adults who are being bullied don't need to just grow up and grow a spine, because one, that's a very nasty victim-blaming mentality and it's disgusting, and two, not everyone can. Some people have anxiety or depression or some other mental illness that doesn't allow them to stand up for themselves. You can't expect everyone to be exactly the same. That's not the way that the world works. And the other issue is that all the older people in our lives that we're promised will help us don't help us. I have been saying for years that I think if you want to go into the educational field as a teacher that is anything from preschool teacher all the way to a college professor, you should have to take psychology courses and get a low-level degree or certification in psychology, so that when someone approaches you and says, listen, something really bad is happening to me right now, I need your help, you can actually help them instead of making them feel like it's their fault. Sorry about the rant. I don't know why this came into my head, but I felt the need to get it off my chest, and I hope that this sparks some kind of conversation about the steps we need to take to keep this kind of thing from happening anymore. As always, do something that makes you happy today, no matter what anyone else thinks about it, unless it's bullying, in which case you're a dick, and I'll see you all soon.